Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Melanin MVP. I am your host, Angela Hollowell, and today I'm joined by Jasmine Santiago Tracy, also known as Jazz. Jazz, thank you so much for joining me today.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.
Yes, I have tried very hard not to be biased and only host interviews with people who are in the North Carolina area, but it is undeniable the amount of incredible people who are in North Carolina and specifically in the Triangle. Jasmine is in the Raleigh area, so it's really awesome to get connected with you and hear a little bit more about your running journey. So my first question is about how did you get into running?
Yeah, I started running like 15 years ago, which is crazy to think about that I'm still doing this, and that's the goal, is to do it for as long as I can. And I actually got into running because at that same time I was starting to actively go to therapy, which was really helpful because we were kind of like diving into some really like traumatic stuff, and then also like trying to figure out why I feel like an alien, which I now know that I was 2 years ago diagnosed with autism spectrum disorder level 1. Running has been something that's been very helpful with like having me get to an introspective point and very meditative, very zen. Now I've learned it's a form of stemming, which is a self-soothing, repetitive activity that neurodivergent people do in order to regulate their nervous system.
So you started at a time where sounds like it was just a part of your therapy, really maybe unknowing to you at the time, but definitely helpful.
Yeah, it was. I remember being in like one of the first few sessions with my therapist, and she was like, do you have something that you can do that is like a form of self-care, that you can also just be like in that introspective space and be able to like, I guess process things that we were talking about in the therapy sessions. And running was definitely like that, like perfect self-care space, being outdoors, being in nature, trying to survive the Florida heat, because I started running in Florida, which I'm still like, why did I do that? You could have started in Chicago, that's where I'm from, where there's 4 seasons and have fall and spring. But it was a really great space for me to kind of like work on things internally.
In terms of continuing on your running journey, like not everyone that runs competes in events, does 5Ks, 10Ks, marathons, those sorts of things. What made you decide to participate in your first structured event?
I think it was that I wanted to see like how far I could go, which it was a 5K. And I just remember starting off way too fast. I think that's like a common thing that most runners do. You don't understand like your pacing. You don't understand like, okay, this is 3 miles. You have to be like, keep it in for the first, maybe speed up the second, and then go as best as you can the 3rd mile. For me, I just remember like taking off and then like, oh, you know what? That was a little too fast, and like reeling it back in, and then kind of like somewhere in the mid like 5K race, like, okay, I think I understand pacing. I think if I want to do this, I need to like work on not sprinting the first mile.
So what did adding a little more structure to your runs look like? Did that look like getting a coach? Did it look like paying more attention to your nutrition? Did it look like investing in more tech? What did that look like for you?
I think how I got into like structuring stuff was actually the run club that I was involved in. And it was a really big run club. They still exist. Shout out West Volusia Runners in Central Florida. They were the ones who introduced me to like Track Tuesdays, the long run, because they do a really good job of providing like runs for all sorts of different kind of runners, like run walkers. If you just want to come out and walk, Track Tuesday was at like the local high school. We would do like, if you were getting into marathoning, they would do this Ormond Loop 20 miler, and it was like totally supported. People were out there with little like aid stations, and like people in the group would also volunteer to do the aid station. So it was like, you could, let's say you didn't want to do the 20 miles, you're like, I just want to get a 10 miler. You can go run the 10 miler, go to the aid station, and then volunteer at like mile 10 and pass out water, Gatorade, and then they would have like snacks and stuff. So it was really cool. They were very supportive, and all different kind of runners. There was a lot of diversity too in that group. That was the first time I saw people that looked like me in a group because before that, I just remember like showing up to races and like looking around and being like, oh, there's a lot of white people here. Not a lot of black people here. And it was cool to see like other Latinos in the group, Black people in the group. And yeah, it was great. I'm still friends with a lot of those people in that group too.
Talk to me about why it felt so significant to see people that looked like you in that run club. I think some of the pushback that I don't necessarily see so much online, but I hear about in person is that people who are white don't necessarily understand why groups that are more inclusive or even groups that are specifically for underrepresented people are necessary in the outdoor space. They don't understand why people just don't feel comfortable coming to any run club group or any marathon or any race event because there's no sign that specifically says they can't be there, and there is no necessarily hindrance to people signing up for a run, no matter their background. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I have been on every end of the spectrum, showed up to group runs where it was predominantly white people and felt very weird. Went to, the run club that I belong to is pretty diverse and still like predominantly white, but I felt like in that Central Florida area, that was probably the most diverse run group until later on when I did get a coach that started to really want to have that diversity and inclusion. And that was like his main thing. But yeah, I think for me, I've always had to show up in predominantly white spaces. It went back all the way to when I was little. We moved from inner city Chicago to white suburbia and just being like one of two kids of color, like in my elementary school, definitely made me feel like, this is different. I felt personally like I never had problems showing up in white spaces because I felt like, well, yeah, I'm going to claim this space. Like I've been doing it my whole life. And so I didn't have a problem with it, but I definitely felt the tension, I guess, like this kind of like, ooh, what are you doing here at this run? It's not as welcoming as the predominantly BIPOC or, like here in the Triangle, a good example is like I've gone to a run club that was predominantly white and all paces, but it wasn't. It was like takeoff and sprint. And went home feeling like I don't feel like I belong here. And I've showed up to like, at least for in the Triangle, the group that I really love is Black Men Run. And they are the nicest guys ever. Like anytime I show up, sometimes I've like run into like your group and they'll be like, hey, what's up? And they'll like fist pump you. And like, they are so welcoming. And also I want to say Black Girls Run too, because I have a few friends in Black Girls Run and they're just so welcoming. It's totally different than when you go to a predominantly like white meetup and like white running club versus like BIPOC exclusive or like something that's a little bit more diverse. You feel that it's not as welcoming as if I showed up to like Run with Black Men Run or I've showed up to their unity runs and it's different. It feels more like family than when I went to that one run group and I was like, I'm never coming here again. But I've gotten to like multiple, unity runs and, run with Black Men Run and Black Girls Run. And some of my like some of the people that I still like talk to the most is from those groups. Like I just ran with my friend LT last weekend and she's a part of Black Girls Run. And, we talked a lot about that on our run, like showing up in spaces that we have to like claim this space. It's not, people think it's not made for us, but we know like, hey, we run, like this is for us.
Yeah, I can't wait to connect with LT pretty soon and have her on the show. But until then, I want to hear a little bit more about what running looks like for you, because I also know in addition to some structured events, which are mostly on pavement, and run clubs, which are mostly on pavement, you do some trail running. So how did you get into that?
I actually started in trail running because it was more fun and you had a lot more cool things to look at. And I was trying to date a guy who's more of a trail runner at the time, so that was motivating. But yeah, started trail running. It was actually, I think it was a mountain bike trail. That's where I started running trail. But I loved it. It was just like up and downs and like so much nature. It just felt like home to me in a way. And I still feel that way here. I don't run as much trail as I'd like to, but I'm going to change that this year. That's one of my goals is to get back to trail. But even here, when I go to Umstead State Park, it just feels different. It feels like home. I also have like a really cool memory of being proposed there. So everything in my life is kind of overlapping with running, which is crazy. But yeah, I just remember like even like one of the first trail races I went to, I was like, I want to say like maybe the only person of color there. And in my mind, I'm like, I'm about to run in this forest with a bunch of white people. This is weird. But I did it. And trail community is a lot more like laid back than road running or like track community. I think road running and track, they can be a little bit more hyper competitive. And that's something that like I've even had to work on internally. Like, okay, we need to, like, it's not that big of a deal. Like, calm down. Yeah, you have to be like a little bit more conscious of like where you're being and looking around and taking in the scenery. Yeah, I have a lot of love for trail because I started on trail and then I met my now husband and he got me into road running, doing some track races, and yeah, I need to get back on the trail.
Oh man, yeah, Umstead is gorgeous. So that is a beautiful story that you got engaged there. I think that's awesome.
Yeah, and let me tell you, I had to earn the ring. He was like, "We're gonna run up this hill."
So talk to me about track running. We haven't seen very many people here on the show, at least, talk about running on a track. But from what I gather on YouTube, a lot of people use track running to help with pacing and to help with intervals, either help them get stronger or help them get faster as a runner. So that translates to road racing pretty well for a lot of runners who want to get better or want to get faster and improve their speed and endurance as runners. Talk to me about what brought you to the track, what's kept you on the track, and why you chose to compete in track running.
I actually got convinced by my coach at the time in Florida. Shout out Coach Seth. He was like, "Have you done track races?" Because there was a group in Gainesville that did track races during the summer just to keep people like training through the summer, because doing any kind of speed work, interval work in the summer in Florida is literally like running in Satan's booty hole. Like, it's not fun. But if you have something to like a goal or like a fun race, it was easier to like maintain that structure and keep training. And honestly, this was like, I'm almost in my 40s now, but this was in my early 30s. So I was introduced to track very late in life. And that's why I tell people around me, if you ever want to try track, do it, because it's a great experience. And I feel like it builds a lot of mental toughness as well. But he was just like, you got some speed, you should try it. And I'm thinking in my head, like, I'm not a track runner. I'm a marathoner, because at that time I was trying to get back into marathoning and I just had a blast and people were so kind. I thought like there's this perception of track where it is very like super competitive, but at least for the people, with the team that I was with, and then, the running crew that was there that put on the track races, it was so much fun. They made it so much fun. It was like, I just remember I went there thinking I'm going to do the 800 like Brenda Martinez, because she was the first Latina I've ever seen on Running World magazine. And I was like, I'm going to do that. And then my coach goes, you're going to do the 600 too. And I was like, I know I'm not. Come on, try it out. And so I did it. And luckily enough, I did it with one of my teammates who has track experience in high school and in college. So I kind of just like, she would give me some advice and I took it. But I have never hated running more than running that 600 meter. I went back because they did it like once a month and did the mile on the track, which I will probably, I'm not going to say never, but I hate the mile on the track. That was quite the experience, but it was great because it was like, I'm sitting in my brain like, okay, these people are fast. Like, I'm not level. And I just didn't care. Like, I was like, yeah, I might be like the second to last person on this track, but I'm gaining experience and I'm learning from people who've been doing it longer than me. And they're cheering me on. Like, nobody's putting down anybody, because we all know we are here in the dead of summer in the Florida heat running around in a circle like a crazy person. So yeah, we're all getting it done. Yeah, it was a great experience. So any person that like wants to do track, I'm like, try it out. Doesn't matter what age you are, you will gain so much experience and it will give you so much confidence when you go into those longer distances.
Has there ever been a running event where you were participating in it and somewhere along the way you were like, man, I really just want to stop right here. Like I could just not do the rest of this.
I think that happens like every race. Like the one that pops up in my brain is like, and this is a race that I actually did really well in, and I like set a mega PR, but I just remember it was a half marathon in Florida, Space Coast Half Marathon, which is so much fun because it's all like space themed. And I just remember at mile 8 going, this is really long and I don't need more. But then I saw like one of my friends at like the turnaround and they were like, come on. And I was like, yeah, I'm going to keep going. And so I just remember at the end of that race, like, thank you so much for cheering at me because like I really was thinking about just not doing it anymore.
That's funny. That's hilarious. Are there any activities that you do to kind of like cross train with running, or is it just all running all the time?
I've definitely, well, now that I'm getting older, I've kind of like peeled back on running so much. I used to be like running 6 days a week and now I'm running 4, which I think is a lot on my body. So really putting in more strength because, you know, as you get older, your bones are a big deal. And I think I spent a lot of like my earlier years in running not doing enough strength training because that is a game changer. And I noticed that last summer when I was consistently strength training. I did a mile race. It was not on a track. It was downhill on a road. It was downhill, which is great. But I noticed that like I was able to really like propel faster because I felt like, oh, my legs feel like stronger than like the last time I've run this race. So I'm definitely trying to do more things that keep me healthy and stronger and give me that longevity in running because I would love to run as long as possible. So strength training is big for me. I never miss mobility or foam rolling because again, I'm getting older and everything hurts. When I do that, I feel a lot more like fluid, especially like while running. And then I do a lot of walking with my dog because she needs it. And then with my husband, because I think that's like our time where we are able to, you know, talk and plan things. Like we're doing a lot of like DIY house projects, and that's when we talk about that kind of stuff. So yeah, I think to me, just running isn't like enough for me personally. I like to do other things. I like to hike. I know we're planning a trip to the mountains this summer to go hike and run and do all that kind of stuff and hopefully connect back into trail. But yeah, I'm not like I think when I broke my foot in 2019 and that was like the first time where I had to like really get into strength training and doing this other stuff like cycling and aqua jogging and like yoga, just doing all these other things just to stay, you know, crazy because I'm injured. That made me realize like I like just being active and doing other things besides running. So I try my best to like put that into my daily life.
On Threads and on social media in general, I think now that the weather is warming up, we're seeing a lot more people get outside, participate in their first kind of events of the season, and hopefully they won't be their last. Hopefully they'll continue to run and train for events. Some people already have events in the fall on their calendar that they've registered for, which I think is awesome. What would you tell people who are newer to running, let's say in the first 1 to 3 years of running, you know, how to have a healthy season, have a healthy running season?
The biggest thing is listen to your body. I think when you first start running, you get really excited. Like, oh, I want to do all the things. I want to run all the races. And I know there's like a boom right now with marathoning. And I'm seeing a lot of people not doing enough training for the marathon, which scares me because the marathon is a beast and should be respected, and it does require training. I'm not saying that you have to like run 6-7 days, you know, a week, but just respect the distance and respect your body. Like your body is going to be able to tell you, hey, you know what? You don't really need to do that speed workout today. I think you need to rest. And then especially for the women out there, strength training. Because I wish I started strength training more consistently when I first started running.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. One of my biggest, I would say, hurdles that I'm trying to work through right now as a cyclist, and I think people who are running are probably also going through this as well, is fueling and nutrition. I think I've learned, definitely in my case, that my natural eating habits are just nowhere near enough for cycling and the amount of calories that I'm burning on a regular basis. And I think if someone is running, even if they're not running 6 days a week, if they're running 3 to 4 days a week, that's still a lot more movement than their body has probably had. And they're burning a lot more calories than what they normally would if they were not doing that. Some people run and get outside for fitness. That's definitely part of it for me, to try to develop good habits while I'm young and able-bodied, but also because I love being outdoors and love cycling and have a lot of other affinities for cycling. Spending a lot more energy learning to fuel myself. I don't necessarily have negative connotations around eating more as necessary, but there are some people who might. How would you talk them through fueling their body and listening to their body, even though it may feel as though their body is telling them to do the opposite of what they would like to do, whether that's rest, whether that's eat more, whether that's eat more of a certain type of food, et cetera, et cetera?
Yeah, this is a big one right now in the running community, because I think a lot of us who started back in our day, we're still getting out of like that whole and it's happening right now where it's like that heroin shoe, super skinny, like there's an ideal runner's body. Like, no, there's not. Like, literally, my people do not come from small people. Like we're not built to be teeny tiny and try to run all these miles. Like, you need to be eating, like, period. For me, like, every day I have ice cream for dessert. That's like my, girl, you got through training, here's an ice cream sundae. And I've noticed it along with that strength training that I previously said in the summer. I really focused on eating and fueling. And there's so much information that's coming out right now about how, how women also process taking carbs, etc. And I've started implementing that, and I've noticed a difference. I can last longer in these runs. I can run faster because I'm eating and I'm also taking my gels and, drinking my hydration. And yeah, like, especially carbs. I never did this, and my coach, she's amazing. She is a fellow Latina who and she's very open about this on social media, struggled with an eating disorder, so she definitely can like pinpoint if you have something like that. I've realized through therapy I had disordered eating for a lot of my running life, and now I'm learning like to undo that and fuel correctly. But she taught me how to do a proper carb load as a practice when I was in marathon training, but then I decided not to do the marathon, but that's a long story for a different day. I never felt that amazing like running, I think it was a 16 or 18 miler, because I did a 2-day carb load. And it was hard because you're just eating a lot. You're just like, I gotta eat this bagel, but then I feel like so bloated. But when I was running, I'm like, it's worth it. It is worth it practicing the carb load. It is worth it. Like, I felt like, okay, I'm doing like 16 or 18 miles, but I could literally go to 20 right now. And I can honestly say I've never felt that in the long run before. So it was just like proof that look what happens when you properly fuel your body. And also, and I've even recently had this happen to me where I was getting a little body dysmorphia because my body was changing because I was eating, because I needed to eat. Yeah. And I think that's another thing that I see a lot of like on social media, like a lot of women saying like, oh, well, I sized up. And I'm like, I'm glad I sized up. Like, my butt grew. I'm happy my butt grew. Like, I'm Puerto Rican. I think my booty needs to be there. So yeah, like for me, I've been very open about those journeys on social media because I hate the whole thinness. You have to look like a certain body type to be a runner. It's so bad and like so harmful to a lot of people.
Thank you for sharing that. That's really helpful. I definitely have noticed, I was like planning a long ride on the bike and I got up that morning and I was like, yeah, I should have started eating last night. Like, this is not, whatever I plan to eat today is not going to be enough.
Yeah.
And that's like so new for me. I've never had to think about like, what do I need to start eating right now to help me for a ride tomorrow or in 2 days? But like, that's like something definitely new for me. And I'm sure for a lot of people. A last question I have for you, and I'll let you get out of here, is, for a lot of this conversation, you've mentioned that, whether it's a run club, whether it's an event, whether it's a place, that it feels like home when you're running. And I think that is an interesting association with body movement. I don't think I've seen a lot of people talk about how running can be a journey back to self, a journey back to community, a journey back to home. Can you say a little more about that for people who may be looking for peace and mental clarity and just a safe space to be when they're out running?
Yeah, I've been talking a lot about running recently in therapy sessions and covering a lot, like, why does it feel like home? And I think it's because, and it could be a long answer.
That's okay.
Yeah, one part is I am neurodivergent. I've always felt like an alien. But then on top of that, I'm a woman of color, and that's also made me feel kind of like an alien in these predominantly white spaces. But when I'm in movement and I'm kind of like out of my head, because a lot of like the neurodivergent experience is, at least for me, because I can't speak to everybody because everybody's traits and sensory issues are different, but my brain turns off when I run and I'm able to feel like myself. And I mean that like in the way that like I'm not, like, my brain is wired differently and I'm always constantly processing and ruminating and like examining, and there's just so much. And then part of it is like also being a minority, having hypervigilance. There's so much happening in the world. But when I run, it's quiet, and that feels like my most authentic self. And then I can, process the things I need to process in a good way and be that introspective space and find that like inner zen, if you will. That's why I say it feels like home. And I also feel like there's a kind of like spiritual aspect to it as well, because you're so connected to your movement and you're so connected to like the earth. And there's just, especially trail running, you're so connected with the nature around you. And it feels like this is where I'm supposed to be.
Man, that's beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing. I think that's a great note to end on. Well, thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate you coming on the show.
Thank you for having me. I was very excited to learn about the podcast. I actually did do a little research and listen to a couple of episodes, and I was like, oh, I love what you're doing. This is amazing.
Thank you so much.